The Morton's Steakhouse hostess led us to our table with practiced elegance, her smile professional as she wished us a happy anniversary. David squeezed my hand as we followed her through the dimly lit restaurant, the gesture so familiar after 15 years of marriage. He'd reserved our favorite corner table, the same one where he'd proposed a lifetime ago. "Champagne is already on ice, as requested," the hostess announced, gesturing to the silver bucket beside our table. "Perfect," David said, pulling out my chair with the chivalry that still made my heart flutter. His dark eyes held mine as he raised his glass. "To us, Emma. 15 incredible years." I smiled, taking in his face, still handsome at 43, though the stress of building his architecture firm had etched fine lines around his eyes. His dark hair was now peppered with distinguished silver at the temples. "To us," I echoed, clinking my flute against his. "And to many more." The champagne was exquisite, as was everything about this evening so far. David had outdone himself this anniversary. Flowers delivered hourly throughout the day, each with notes recounting memories from our years together. The diamond tennis bracelet he'd fastened around my wrist before dinner caught the candlelight, sending tiny rainbows dancing across the white tablecloth. "You've spoiled me today," I said, fingering the bracelet. "It's too much." "Nothing's too much for you." His smile seemed almost sad, but I dismissed the thought. David had been working long hours on a major development project. Fatigue, nothing more. We ordered our usual filet mignon for him, seafood platter for me, and fell into comfortable conversation about my elementary school teaching position, his latest building designs, and whether we should finally plan that trip to Italy we'd been postponing for years. "Let's do it," he said suddenly, reaching for my hand. "Let's book the tickets tomorrow. Life's too short to keep waiting for the perfect moment." I laughed, surprised by his impulsiveness. "Just like that? What about your Westlake project? You said it would consume the next 6 months. I'll make it work." His intensity caught me off guard. "We need this, Emma. Just us, reconnecting away from everything." Before I could respond, a commotion near the entrance drew our attention. A woman was arguing with the hostess, her voice rising above the restaurant's hushed atmosphere. Something about her seemed vaguely familiar, tall and willowy with cascading auburn hair, wearing a green dress that hugged her curves. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but you don't have a reservation," the hostess insisted. "And as you can see, we're fully booked tonight." "I don't need a reservation," the woman replied, her voice carrying clearly now. "I just need 5 minutes with David Mitchell." The sound of my husband's name hit me like a physical blow. David froze, his face draining of color as he stared at the woman. In that moment, everything shifted. The restaurant, our anniversary, our 15 years together, all suddenly suspended in terrible uncertainty. "David?" I whispered, but he seemed incapable of speech, his eyes fixed on the approaching woman with an expression I'd never seen before. Fear? Guilt? The hostess hurried after her, apologizing to patrons as they wound through the tables. "Ma'am, please, you can't just—" "It's fine," David said, standing abruptly. His voice sounded strange, detached. "I'll handle this." The woman stopped at our table, her green eyes bright with emotion. Anger, triumph, vindication. Up close, she was younger than I'd initially thought, perhaps early 30s. Beautiful in a striking rather than conventional way, with high cheekbones and full lips now curved in a bitter smile. "Sorry to interrupt your special evening," she said, not sounding sorry at all. Her gaze flicked dismissively over me before, returning to David. "But I figured your wife should know the truth on this historic occasion." "Vanessa, please," David said quietly. "Not here." The name registered immediately. Vanessa Miller, the talented junior architect David had hired last year. He'd mentioned her occasionally, always professionally, commenting on her innovative designs or work ethic. Nothing that would have raised suspicions. "If not here, when?" she demanded, one hand moving to rest protectively on her stomach. The gesture's significance wasn't immediately apparent until she continued. Were you planning to tell her before or after I start showing? Before or after your baby is born? The words hung in the air like shattered glass. Baby. Your baby. I couldn't process them, couldn't connect them to my husband, to our life, to this anniversary dinner with its champagne and memories and plans for Italy. You're pregnant? The question escaped me in a whisper, directed at this stranger who had just detonated my world. Vanessa turned to me, her expression softening slightly. 4 months. I'm sorry you're finding out this way, but he left me no choice. He's been promising to tell you for weeks. The restaurant had gone silent around us, other diners witnessing our catastrophe with uncomfortable fascination. A waiter hovered uncertainly nearby, unsure whether to intervene. I looked at David, waiting for him to deny it, to explain that this was some horrible misunderstanding. Instead, he passed a hand over his face, shoulders slumping in defeat. Emma, I can explain, he began, the most damning words he could have uttered. So, it's true? My voice sounded oddly calm to my own ears, as though belonging to someone else. You've been having an affair with her, and now she's pregnant with your child? He reached for my hand, but I pulled away. It's complicated. I never meant for this to happen. A strange detachment came over me. Shock, I would later recognize. I stood slowly, gathering my purse and the wrap I'd draped over my chair earlier. Emma, please don't leave like this. Let me explain. You've been explaining for 15 minutes now, David, Vanessa cut in. Tell her the rest. Tell her you promised me you were ending your marriage. Tell her about the apartment you leased for us. Each revelation landed like another blow. An apartment. Ending our marriage. Plans I knew nothing about. Is that true? I asked, fighting to keep my voice steady. His silence was confirmation enough. I turned to leave, but Vanessa stepped into my path. You should know everything, she said, her voice oddly gentle now. He told me your marriage was essentially over, that you'd grown apart, were staying together out of habit, that there hadn't been real intimacy between you for years. The cruel lies pierced through my shock. Just last weekend, we'd made love on a lazy Sunday morning, laughing and connecting like newlyweds. David had whispered that he'd never been happier. Had those moments meant nothing while he was building a life with someone else? Move, I said quietly to Vanessa. Please. Something in my expression made her step aside. I walked through the restaurant with my head high, aware of pitying glances, but refusing to crumble under their weight. David called after me, but I kept walking, out the door and into the cool evening air. Only when I reached our car, his car, technically, that we'd driven together to celebrate 15 years of what I now realized might be fiction, did I stop. I didn't have the keys. They were in David's pocket, along with whatever explanations or justifications he thought might salvage this unsalvageable moment. I pulled out my phone with shaking hands and ordered a rideshare, then leaned against the car, waiting. Behind me, the restaurant door opened and I tensed, expecting David. Instead, an older woman approached, another diner who had witnessed the scene. Are you all right, dear? She asked, her face creased with concern. No, I answered honestly. But I will be. My ride arrived before David emerged from the restaurant. As we pulled away, I caught a glimpse of him in the entrance, scanning the parking lot. Vanessa stood slightly behind him, her hand still resting on her stomach, carrying a life that would forever connect her to my husband in ways I couldn't comprehend. The driver, sensing my distress, remained silent as I stared out the window, city lights blurring through unexpected tears. 15 years collapsed into ruins behind me while an uncertain future loomed ahead. In the span of 5 devastating minutes, I had become a statistic. The blindsided wife, the woman who didn't know, the collateral damage in someone else's love story. But as the initial shock began to recede, another emotion surfaced. Not just heartbreak or betrayal, but something sharper, more clarifying. Somewhere beneath the wreckage of this night, I recognized the first stirrings of resolve. This would not define me. This public humiliation, this breathtaking betrayal would not be the final chapter of my story. My phone began to ring, David's name and smiling face illuminating the screen. I declined the call and turned off my phone entirely. Change of plans, I told the driver. Take me to the Grand Horizon Hotel downtown, please. He nodded, adjusting course without comment. I needed space, time to think beyond the fog of shock. Tomorrow would bring confrontations and decisions, lawyers and logistics. But tonight belonged to me, to grieve the death of my marriage and begin imagining what might rise from its ashes. The 15 roses David had sent to my classroom that morning, one for each year of our marriage, now seemed like funeral. Flowers, marking an ending rather than celebrating a milestone. As we turned onto the freeway, I unclasped the diamond bracelet from my wrist and slipped it into my purse. Its sparkle suddenly felt less like love and more like compensation. The Grand Horizon hotel room felt impersonal and cold, its luxury unable to cushion the impact of the evening's revelations. I sat on the edge of the king-sized bed, finally turning my phone back on to find 17 missed calls from David, along with a stream of increasingly desperate text messages. Please come home so we can talk. It's not what you think. I never meant to hurt you. Emma, please answer me. The last one had come just 10 minutes ago. I'm at home waiting. I love you. Love. The word seemed hollow now, stripped of meaning. How could he claim to love me while creating a life with another woman? While telling her our marriage was essentially over? The David I thought I knew would never have betrayed me this way, which meant one terrifying truth. I had never really known my husband at all. I scrolled through my contacts, stopping at Lily's name. My younger sister had warned me about David, years ago, noticing things I'd been too in love to see. His subtle, controlling tendencies, his need to be the center of attention, the way he'd sometimes undermine my confidence in small, almost imperceptible ways. I'd dismissed her concerns, attributing them to her general cynicism about relationships. Now I wondered what else I had missed. Instead of calling Lily, I texted my best friend Kate. Something's happened. Can you meet me at the Grand Horizon? Tomorrow morning? Room 814. Her reply came instantly. On my way now. No, I texted back. I need tonight alone. 9 a.m. tomorrow. I'll be there, she promised. Whatever it is, we'll handle it together. I placed the phone on the nightstand and moved to the bathroom, staring at my reflection in the harsh fluorescent light. The woman looking back seemed simultaneously familiar and foreign, the same dark blonde hair I'd styled carefully for the anniversary dinner, the same blue eyes now rimmed with smudged mascara, the same features now arranged in an expression of shocked disbelief. For 15 years, my identity had been partially defined by being David Mitchell's wife. Who was I without that anchor? The question loomed large as I methodically removed my makeup, changed into the oversized t-shirt I'd purchased from the hotel gift shop, and slipped between the cool sheets. Sleep evaded me. I replayed the restaurant scene repeatedly, analyzing each moment for clues I should have noticed earlier. Had David seemed nervous before Vanessa arrived? Had he been secretly watching the door, knowing she might appear? The diamond bracelet, the hourly flowers, the sudden insistence on an Italian vacation. Had these been driven by guilt rather than love? More painfully, I scrolled back through mental images of the past year, searching for signs of his affair. Late nights at the office, the architecture conference in Chicago he'd insisted on attending alone, the sudden password changes on his phone, the decreased interest in socializing with our couple friends. The signs had been there. I simply hadn't wanted to see them. Morning arrived without sleep. I ordered room service coffee and stood by the window, watching the city wake up. 15 stories below, people hurried along sidewalks, their lives proceeding normally while mine had fundamentally altered. At precisely 9 a.m., a knock came at the door. Kate rushed in, her expression shifting from concern to alarm as she took in my appearance. My God, Emma, what happened? I told her everything. The anniversary dinner, Vanessa's dramatic entrance, the pregnancy announcement, the apartment David had secretly leased. Kate listened without interrupting, her initial shock giving way to quiet fury. That absolute bastard, she said when I finished. After everything you've been through together, the fertility treatments, your father's illness, supporting him while he built his firm from nothing. The reminder of our unsuccessful attempts to have children years ago, the hormone treatments, the scheduled intimacy, the devastating disappointments, added another layer of betrayal. We'd eventually accepted our childless state, finding other ways to build a meaningful life together. Or so I'd thought. Have you called a lawyer? Kate asked, shifting immediately to practical matters. Not yet. It's barely been 12 hours. You need to move quickly. Men like David are experts at controlling narratives and assets. He's probably meeting with his attorney right now. The thought hadn't occurred to me. David and I shared everything. Our home, our bank accounts, our retirement savings. In my shock, I hadn't considered the practical implications of this betrayal. I should go home, I said, suddenly standing. I need to get some things. Important documents. Kate placed a restraining hand on my arm. You can't go alone. Not until you've processed this more. He'll try to manipulate you, Emma. I've seen it before. He wouldn't, I began automatically, then stopped. 24 hours ago, I would have sworn David would never cheat on me, never father a child with another woman, never lie about our marriage. My certainty about what he would or wouldn't do had evaporated. I'll come with you, Kate offered. We'll get what you need and leave before he can spin some elaborate explanation. My phone vibrated with an incoming call. David again. I declined. It had found 3 new voice messages. Playing the most recent one on speaker, his voice filled the hotel room. Emma, please. You're scaring me. Just let me know you're safe. We need to talk about this like adults. What Vanessa said? It's complicated. There's more to the story than you know. Please come home. Kate raised an eyebrow. More to the story? Is he seriously trying to explain away a pregnant mistress? I shook my head, uncertain what possible explanation could justify what I'd witnessed. Yet a small, treacherous part of me wanted to hear it, wanted some framework that would make this nightmare comprehensible. I need to at least hear what he has to say, I said quietly. And you will, after you've consulted an attorney and secured your financial interests. Kate's practicality anchored me. This isn't just about emotions, Emma. It's about your future. She was right. I called the law firm where her cousin Meredith worked, specializing in high-asset divorces. Meredith agreed to see me that afternoon, her voice professionally compassionate as she outlined what documents I should try to gather from the house. Financial statements, tax returns, property deeds, investment account information, she listed, and anything related to his business. Partners often hide assets through their companies. The advice transformed my shock into purpose. Kate drove me to my neighborhood in her practical sedan rather than the luxury SUV David had insisted we needed. As we approached our craftsman-style home, the forever house we'd purchased 7 years ago, I noticed David's car missing. From the driveway. That's strange, I murmured. He texted that he was waiting at home. Relief mixed with apprehension as Kate parked. Using my key, I entered cautiously, half expecting to find David inside despite his car's absence. The house was silent, still bearing evidence of our normal life. Morning coffee cups in the sink, mail stacked on the counter, the novel I'd been reading splayed open on the sofa. Let's work quickly, Kate suggested. Bedroom documents first. then his home office. I moved through our home with strange detachment, gathering essential items: clothes, toiletries, jewelry my grandmother had left me, the external hard drive containing my teaching materials and personal photos. In David's home office, I located the fireproof box where we kept important documents, grateful that I knew the combination. As I sorted through papers, Kate called from our bedroom. "Emma, you should see this." Her tone made my heart sink. I found her standing by David's dresser, holding a small velvet jewelry box. "It was in his sock drawer," she explained, opening it to reveal a delicate gold necklace with an emerald pendant. "There's a note." The handwritten card read simply, "For my Vanessa, whose eyes match the emerald's depths. All my love, D." The far, intimate gift, clearly not intended for me, confirmed the emotional nature of his affair. This wasn't just sex. It was a relationship conducted parallel to our marriage, complete with romantic gestures and expressions of love. "Keep looking," I said, my voice hollow. "I need to know everything." Kate hesitated. "Are you sure? Some things can't be unknown once discovered." I wasn't sure, but nodded anyway. We continued our search, finding more evidence scattered throughout. The house, a hidden folder in his email containing months of correspondence with Vanessa, restaurant receipts for places we'd never visited together, a brochure for a couple's retreat in Napa Valley scheduled for next month. Most damning was the lease agreement for a 2-bedroom apartment in Westlake Tower, one of his firm's recent luxury developments. The document, dated 3 months ago, listed both David and Vanessa as tenants. He had signed a 12-month lease while sitting across the dinner table from me each night, planning weekend activities and discussing summer vacation ideas. As we packed the car with my belongings and the gathered evidence, a text arrived from David. "Meeting ran long. Coming home now to wait for you. Please be there." "Perfect timing," Kate muttered. "Let's go." We were backing out of the driveway when David's car turned onto our street. He accelerated when he saw us, pulling in sharply behind Kate's sedan, blocking our exit. His face, visible through the windshield, registered shock at seeing Kate driving, then determination as he approached my passenger window. "Emma," he called, tapping on the glass. "Please, 5 minutes." Kate glanced at me questioningly. I hesitated, then lowered my window halfway. "Move your car, David," I said, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. "I have an appointment." "With who?" "Where did you go last night?" I was worried sick. His concern might have seemed genuine if I hadn't just discovered the extent of his deception. "I have an appointment with a divorce attorney," I replied, watching his face pale. "Now please move your car." "A divorce attorney?" He ran a hand through his disheveled hair. "That's extreme, Emma. You haven't even heard my side of the story." "I found the apartment lease," I said quietly. "And the emerald necklace. And the Napa Valley reservations." He stepped back as though I'd struck him. "You went through my things?" "Our things," I corrected. "In our home, paid for with our money." His expression hardened slightly. "So that's your game? Coming here with a witness to gather ammunition while I'm out? That's not like you, Emma." The attempt to make me feel guilty, a familiar dynamic I now recognized with painful clarity, ignited a sudden fury within me. "You know what's not like me, David? Discovering my husband has been living a double life. Finding out on our anniversary in front of an entire restaurant that he's fathered a child with a woman half my age. That's not like me either, but here we are." Kate revved the engine pointedly. "Move your car, David, or I'll call the police and report that you're unlawfully detaining us." For a moment I thought he might refuse. Then, with a tight nod, he returned to his vehicle and backed away just enough to create an exit path. As Kate maneuvered around his car, he called out to me. "This isn't over, Emma. There are things you don't understand." In the rearview mirror, I watched him standing in our driveway, becoming smaller as we drove away. The man I had loved for 15 years, now transformed into someone I barely recognized. The future I had imagined vanishing with each mile we put between us. "You did great," Kate said, squeezing my hand briefly. "The first steps are always the hardest." I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. 15 years of marriage ended in less than 15 hours. The diamond bracelet David had given me last night still sat in my purse, its weight a reminder of everything I was leaving behind, the good with the bad, the true with the false. As we turned onto the main road, my phone displayed another incoming call from David. This time I didn't just decline it, I blocked his number entirely. Meredith Parker's law office exuded quiet power, tasteful artwork, subtle lighting, and furniture that whispered of success without shouting it. The attorney herself matched her surroundings, elegant, composed, and radiating competence in her tailored navy suit. "The good news," Meredith said after reviewing the documents I'd gathered, "is that Massachusetts is an equitable distribution state. After 15 years of marriage, you're entitled to a fair portion of all marital assets, including his business. His business. I hadn't considered claiming part of David's architecture firm. You supported him while he built it, correct? Financially and otherwise?" I nodded, remembering the lean early years when I'd worked extra tutoring jobs so David could decline less creative projects, the dinner parties I'd hosted for potential clients, the vacations postponed so he could reinvest profits. "Then yes, you have a legitimate claim," Meredith confirmed, "especially given the circumstances." Kate, sitting beside me, squeezed my hand supportively. "What circumstances specifically matter legally?" I asked. "Infidelity itself doesn't significantly impact divorce settlements here," Meredith explained. "But financial infidelity does. The apartment lease, secret expenditures, potentially diverting company funds, these strengthen our position considerably." She outlined a strategic approach: immediate filing for divorce, citing irretrievable breakdown, temporary orders for financial support, and exclusive use of our home, comprehensive discovery to uncover potentially hidden assets. "What about the baby?" I forced myself to ask the question that had been haunting me. Meredith's expression softened slightly. "Legally, that's between your husband and Ms. Miller. It doesn't directly impact your divorce proceedings, though it may create practical considerations regarding timing and public perception." Public perception. The phrase triggered a realization that this private nightmare could become community knowledge. Our friends, colleagues, my students' parents, people would inevitably learn about David's betrayal and Vanessa's pregnancy. "I recommend minimal contact with your husband outside my presence," Meredith continued. "Men in his position often attempt to manipulate emotions to secure favorable settlements." I signed the retainer agreement, feeling both empowered and defeated. The efficient legal machinery now set in motion seemed simultaneously liberating and final, the official dismantling of a life I'd believed was securely built. After leaving Meredith's office, I checked into a different hotel, a practical, extended-stay place where I could remain while determining next steps. Kate helped me unpack the essentials we'd retrieved from my house, creating a semblance of familiarity in the impersonal space. "You can stay with me," she offered again. "The guest room is yours as long as needed." "I appreciate that," I said, grateful for her friendship. "But I need neutral space right now, somewhere without memories or other people's routines." She understood, promising to check in daily and arranging to take me to retrieve my car from the restaurant parking lot, where it had remained since the disastrous anniversary dinner. Alone that evening, I finally called my sister Lily. Her initial, "I told you so," quickly melted into fierce protectiveness when she heard the complete story. "I'm flying in tomorrow," she announced, brooking no argument. "You shouldn't face this alone." "Kate's been amazing," I assured her. "And I have a good attorney." "Kate has to work." I've got vacation days saved, and Paul can handle the kids for a week. My brother-in-law was unusually supportive by any standard. Besides, you were there for me during my divorce. Time to return the favor. The mention of her divorce 5 years earlier, from a man who'd seemed perfect until he wasn't, created an unexpected connection between us. Different circumstances, similar pain. Okay, I conceded, realizing I wanted her support more than I'd admitted. But no gloating about your initial David concerns. Wouldn't dream of it, she promised, though we both knew a few gentle, I warned you moments would inevitably surface. After we hung up, I reluctantly opened my email, knowing I needed to address work matters. Among routine school communications was a message from David sent to my personal account, apparently realizing I'd blocked his number. Subject, please read. There's more to this situation. Emma, I know you're hurt and angry and you have every right to be, but things aren't what they seem with Vanessa. I made terrible mistakes, yes, but the situation is more complicated than you know. The baby isn't what you think. Please give me a chance to explain in person before you make irreversible decisions. 15 years deserves at least one conversation. Love you. I've always loved you, even when I failed to show it. David, the message raised questions I wasn't emotionally equipped to answer. What did he mean, the baby isn't what you think? Was he denying paternity, making excuses, creating confusion to delay divorce proceedings as Meredith had warned? I forwarded the email to Meredith without responding to David, then tried to distract myself with mindless television. Sleep eventually came, though fitfully. The next morning, I faced another difficult task, informing my school principal about the situation. Ellen Hamilton had been my mentor since I'd started teaching 3rd grade at Brookside Elementary 8. Years ago, her immediate concern was touching. Take whatever time you need, she said. Family medical leave applies to emotional health too. I can keep Ms. Peterson as your substitute through next week at minimum. I'd rather work, I admitted. Structure and routine would help right now. Ellen studied me carefully. I understand that impulse, but consider this. Your students are perceptive. They'll sense if you're struggling, and you'll exhaust yourself maintaining a brave face. Give yourself at least until Monday, 4 more days to establish some equilibrium. Her wisdom penetrated my determination. Teaching 38-year-olds required emotional energy I simply couldn't summon right now. You're right, I conceded. But I'd like to prepare lesson plans for Paula, and maybe record a short video explaining my absence without details. Perfect, Ellen agreed. And Emma, when you do return, remember that our community supports you. Whatever narrative emerges publicly, your colleagues know your character. Her assurance meant more than she could know. In the small suburb where we lived and worked, news traveled quickly. David's firm had designed the new library and community center. His professional reputation extended throughout the area. Rumors would inevitably circulate once divorce filings became public. Lily arrived that afternoon with her characteristic whirlwind energy, sweeping into my hotel room with care packages, practical supplies, and fierce loyalty. First order of business, she announced after unpacking, is getting you back into your house. I blinked in surprise. David's there? So? It's your home too, and your attorney confirmed you have every right to occupy it. He should be the one in a sad hotel room, not you. Her certainty was tempting, but felt premature. I'm not ready to face him daily, Lily. This arrangement is temporary until I figure out next steps. Next steps should include asserting your rights, she countered, but didn't push further when she saw my expression. Instead, she suggested dinner at a restaurant across town, somewhere David wouldn't think to look if he was trying to find me. As we settled into a quiet booth, Lily asked the question Kate had been too gentle to pose directly. Do you think there were others before Vanessa? The possibility had circled my mind relentlessly. I don't know. There were business trips, late nights, opportunities if he wanted them. Men who lead double lives usually don't limit themselves to one indiscretion. Lily observed, then grimaced apologetically. Sorry, not helping. No, I need to consider all possibilities, I sighed, especially with the divorce proceedings starting. Our conversation paused as my phone displayed an unfamiliar local number. Normally, I'd let unknown calls go to voicemail, but something prompted me to answer. Is this Emma Mitchell? A woman's voice asked, familiar, though I couldn't immediately place it. Yes. Who's calling? It's Vanessa Miller. The name sent a jolt through me. Please don't hang up. We need to talk. Lily, seeing my expression, mouthed, Who is it? I wrote Vanessa on a napkin, watching my sister's eyes widen. I have nothing to say to you, I managed, though curiosity warred with anger. I understand, but please listen. David's been telling me things about you that don't add up. After seeing your reaction at the restaurant, I think he's been lying. To us both. Despite myself, I was intrigued. What kind of lies? Not over the phone, she said, her voice tense. Could we meet somewhere? Just 20 minutes of your time. I have information you should know before proceeding with divorce. Every instinct warned against meeting my husband's pregnant mistress. Yet the suggestion that David had been manipulating both of us resonated with uncomfortable possibilities. How did you get this number? I asked instead of answering. From your school's contact list. I called pretending to be a parent. At least, she was honest about her deception. Please, Mrs. Mitchell, Emma, I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important. After a moment's deliberation, I agreed to meet her the following morning at a coffee shop near my hotel. Public enough for safety, private, enough for difficult conversations. Lily protested vehemently after I hung up. It's a trap, she insisted. She's working with David to manipulate you. Maybe, I acknowledged, but I need to know what she has to say. You can come with me, stay at a nearby table. Lily reluctantly agreed, though her expression remained troubled. That night, I received another email from David. I know Vanessa contacted you. Please don't meet with her alone. She's not stable right now and might say anything to cause problems. I can explain everything if you'll just talk to me instead. His awareness of Vanessa's call confirmed they were still in communication. But his attempt to prevent our meeting had the opposite effect, strengthening my resolve to hear what she had to say. The coffee shop was half empty when I arrived the next morning, Lily positioning herself 2 tables away with a clear view of the entrance. Vanessa arrived precisely on time, her auburn hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, her green eyes shadowed with fatigue. The flowing top she wore didn't completely conceal the small but distinct curve of her pregnancy. Thank you for meeting me, she said, sliding into the seat across from mine. Up close, without the heightened emotions of our first encounter, she looked younger and more vulnerable than I remembered. You said you have information, I prompted, keeping my voice neutral despite the surreal nature of sitting across from the woman who had shattered my life. Vanessa placed a folder on the table between us. First, I want to apologize for how I approached you at the restaurant. It was impulsive and cruel, regardless of circumstances. The unexpected apology caught me off guard. Why did you do it that way? She exhaled slowly. Because I'd just discovered David had been lying to me for months. He told me you knew about our relationship, that you had an understanding because your marriage was effectively over. He said you were relieved he'd found someone else because you wanted out but didn't want to be the bad guy. Each word landed, like a stone. That's completely false. I realize that now, she acknowledged. Your reaction at the restaurant made that abundantly clear, but I believed him until that moment. She opened the folder, revealing printed text messages, emails, and what appeared to be financial statements. David told me you had separated last year and were proceeding with a quiet divorce, that you continued living together occasionally for financial reasons while finalizing the separation. The audacity of his lies was breathtaking. We've never separated or discussed divorce until now. Vanessa nodded grimly. He showed me papers, separation agreements with your supposed signature. When I questioned why you still attended events, together, he said it was to maintain appearances until the architecture firm's major project was completed, protecting the company's stability. And you believed this? I couldn't keep the incredulity from my voice. It seemed plausible, she defended, then softened. But I had doubts, especially when he was always unavailable on weekends and holidays. When I discovered I was pregnant, I insisted on meeting you formally to discuss co-parenting arrangements. That's when his excuses multiplied. She pushed the folder toward me. These documents show inconsistencies in his stories to us both. The apartment lease, for instance. He told me it was already finalized with your knowledge as part of the divorce settlement. He told you nothing. As I examined the evidence she'd compiled, a disturbing picture emerged of David's elaborate deceptions. He had created entirely different narratives for each of us, managing the contradictions with calculated precision. There's something else, Vanessa said, her voice dropping. Something about the pregnancy you should know. Her hand moved protectively, to her stomach, but her expression held shame rather than the defiance she'd displayed at the restaurant. David's not actually the father. The coffee shop seemed to tilt around me as Vanessa's words registered. What do you mean, he's not the father? Lily, noticing my expression, half rose from her table before I subtly gestured for her to remain seated. The timing doesn't work, Vanessa explained, her cheeks flushing with evident embarrassment. David and I were involved, but there was someone else during the same period. When I calculated the conception date, I realized it had to be Michael, my ex, not David. Does David know this? Yes. I told him as soon as I figured it out. About a month ago. He was strange about it. Not relieved as I'd expected, but almost determined to claim the baby anyway. She fidgeted with her cup. He kept talking about how this could be his second chance, how he'd always wanted to be a father. The comment struck a painful chord. Our unsuccessful fertility struggles years ago had deeply affected David. After the third miscarriage, he'd been the one to suggest we stop trying, claiming he'd made peace with a childless future. Had that been another lie? So why tell me you were carrying David's child at the restaurant? I asked, struggling to understand her actions. She looked down. Because that's what he was still telling everyone, including me sometimes, despite knowing the truth. He'd already started shopping for baby furniture, talking about names. It was like he was living in a fantasy. When I confronted him about meeting you officially, he finally admitted you had no idea about any of it. Not about us, not about the baby. And that's when you decided to ambush us at our anniversary dinner? I couldn't keep the edge from my voice. I know it was inexcusable, she acknowledged. I was angry, hurt, feeling manipulated. I wanted to force the truth into the open. I didn't consider how devastating it would be for you. She met my eyes directly. I'm truly sorry. The apology seemed sincere, but questions remained. If you knew the baby wasn't his, why maintain the pretense at the restaurant? Why not just expose his lies without that particular detail? Because, at that moment, I still needed leverage, she admitted candidly. David had convinced me to leave my job at his firm, promising to support me and the baby. I have no income, a lease I can't afford alone, and pregnancy complications that make immediate employment difficult. I was terrified. The practical considerations behind her actions made them somewhat more comprehensible, if not entirely forgivable. Have you told the actual father? This Michael person? She nodded. Yesterday. He was shocked, but not unwilling, to be involved. We're meeting with a family law attorney tomorrow to discuss options. I absorbed this information, trying to reconcile it with everything I'd believed about my life and marriage just days earlier. If the baby wasn't David's, why had he created such an elaborate deception? Why risk our marriage for a relationship That didn't even include the child he seemingly wanted? There's more, Vanessa said quietly, pulling another document from her folder. Something I discovered only after researching David more carefully following our restaurant confrontation. She slid a printed news article across the table. It was dated 7 years ago, from a small paper in Vermont, a wedding announcement for David Mitchell and Caroline Winters. That's not me, I said automatically, though the groom's photo was unmistakably David, younger but recognizable. No, it's his first wife. Vanessa watched my reaction carefully. The marriage ended 5 years ago. From what I could find, she filed for divorce, citing fraud and misrepresentation. The revelation hit like a physical blow. David was married before me? That's impossible. We've been together for 18 years, married for 15. Vanessa pointed to the article's date. According to this, he married Caroline 7 years ago, while married to you. They divorced 2 years later. Bigamy. The word surfaced in my mind, though I couldn't bring myself to say it aloud. If this was true, David hadn't just been unfaithful. He'd committed a crime, creating a second family while maintaining our marriage. I need to verify this, I said, taking photos of the article with my phone. My hands trembled so badly I had to try 3 times. I understand your skepticism, Vanessa replied. I've compiled everything I could find, including contact information for Caroline. She remarried last year and lives in Burlington. She handed me a slip of paper with a phone number. I haven't contacted her myself. That felt like overstepping. The irony of her comment about overstepping, given her restaurant confrontation, wasn't lost on me. But the potential revelation was too significant to dismiss based on the messenger's past behavior. Why are you giving me all this? I asked, genuinely curious about her motivation. Because I was used, she said simply. Manipulated by a man who created an elaborate fiction. Finding out about you, the real you, not the convenient version David invented, made me realize how extensive his deceptions are. No one deserves that. She gathered her things, preparing to leave. Also, practically speaking, I need to establish clear legal and financial boundaries with David, especially with the baby's actual paternity now acknowledged. Your divorce proceedings will impact that process. Her honesty about self-interest was almost refreshing after David's layers of lies. Lily joined me immediately after Vanessa departed, bubbling with questions. I handed her the wedding announcement, watching her expression shift from confusion to shock. This can't be real, she said, though her tone lacked conviction. I need to call Caroline Winters and Meredith. The magnitude of what I'd learned demanded immediate legal guidance. Back in my hotel room, with Lily beside me for moral support, I dialed the number Vanessa had provided. A woman answered on the 3rd ring. Hello? Is this Caroline Hunter, formerly Caroline Winters? I asked, using the married name Vanessa had mentioned. Yes. Her voice held immediate wariness. Who's calling? My name is Emma Mitchell. I believe we may have something in common. David Mitchell. The silence that followed confirmed the truth before she spoke. You're his wife from Massachusetts. You knew about me? I couldn't mask my surprise. Not until after I filed for divorce, she said, her tone softening with what sounded like sympathy. The attorney discovered the prior marriage during proceedings. That's when everything made sense. His frequent business trips, the separate banking accounts, why I never met his supposed family from Chicago. We talked for 30 minutes, comparing experiences. The patterns were disturbingly similar. David's charm, his explanations for unavailability during holidays, separate financial arrangements that he justified as protecting retirement assets. Caroline had been married to him for just under 2 years before discovering suspicious communications and investigating further. The man is pathological, she concluded. He creates these separate lives and maintains them with impressive dedication, until the complications become unmanageable. Then he manufactures a crisis in one life that requires him to focus elsewhere, cycling between his various relationships. How many do you think there were? Are? I couldn't quite frame the question properly. Besides us? At least one other that I confirmed. A woman in New Hampshire he was seeing during our marriage. She thought he was a widower named Daniel Matthews. The conversation left me reeling. The man I'd been married to, lived with, loved, built a life around, was effectively a stranger. A con artist who had targeted me for reasons I couldn't fathom, maintaining an elaborate deception for 15 years. Meredith's reaction to the new information was immediate and strategic. She filed emergency motions to freeze all our assets, including David's business accounts, and accelerated the divorce petition with additional grounds, including fraud and bigamy. "This changes everything," she explained during our hasty meeting. "If his marriage to Caroline occurred while you were already legally married, your marriage remains valid while his second marriage was fraudulent. But we need to investigate whether there were others before you, which could invalidate your marriage as well." The legal complexities made my head spin, but one thing was clear. David's deceptions were far more extensive and calculated than even Vanessa's revelations had suggested. That evening, as Lily ordered takeout for us at the hotel, I received a text from a number I didn't recognize. "I know Vanessa met with you. Whatever she told you is distorted by her emotional state and pregnancy hormones. I've been trying to protect you from her instability. Please, Emma, 15 years together deserves a conversation. Look at your email." I checked my email to find another message from David with the subject line, "The truth about everything." The urge to read it warred with Meredith's advice to avoid direct communications. After a moment's hesitation, I forwarded it to her without opening it. Her reply came quickly. "Do not respond. Forward any communications to me. We're serving him with papers tomorrow, and his reaction may be unpredictable given what we now know about his pattern of deception." That night, unable to sleep, I scrolled through photos on my phone, visual documentation of the life I'd believed was real. Anniversaries, vacations, holiday gatherings, ordinary moments I'd treasured. Had any of it been genuine? How could someone maintain such an elaborate performance for 15 years? More disturbingly, what had I missed? What signs of David's true nature had I ignored or rationalized away? The separate email accounts I'd attributed to his desire for work-life balance, the business trips that always seemed to fall on certain holidays, his reluctance to have children after our fertility struggles, which I'd interpreted as protecting me from further disappointment. The patterns Caroline had described matched perfectly with behaviors I'd accepted without question. The realization that I'd been so thoroughly deceived made me doubt my own judgment, my own perceptions of reality. A light knock on my hotel room door startled me from these thoughts. Lily was in the adjoining room, so it couldn't be her. A glance through the peephole revealed David standing in the hallway. My heart hammered as I called through the door. "How did you find me?" "The location came up when you forwarded my email," he replied, his voice carrying that familiar warmth that had once comforted me. "Please, Emma, 5 minutes, that's all I'm asking." "I'm not opening this door," I said firmly. "My attorney advised against any direct contact." "Attorneys escalate everything," he argued. "We can resolve this between ourselves if you'll just listen." Caroline's situation was completely different, and Vanessa has serious emotional problems. You can't trust what she's told you. His attempt to discredit both women matched the pattern Caroline had described, always dividing, creating doubt, positioning himself as the reasonable party while painting others as unstable or vindictive. "Is it true you were legally married to Caroline while married to me?" I asked directly. A pause. "Technically, yes, but it's more complicated than that. I thought my divorce from you had been finalized. There was paperwork." The audacity of the lie, suggesting we had divorced without my knowledge, left me speechless. I've made mistakes, Emma. Terrible ones. But my love for you has always been real, the cornerstone of my life. These other situations, they happened during periods when I was struggling with issues you couldn't understand. Like what, David? What possible issues justify creating multiple marriages, multiple lives? Another pause. I was diagnosed with a dissociative disorder years ago. Sometimes I become different versions of myself, create separate lives during episodes. With treatment, I've been stable, but stress triggers relapses. The convenient medical explanation, delivered only when confronted with irrefutable evidence, seemed like another manipulation tactic. If that's true, where are your treatment records? Why am I only hearing about this diagnosis now? I was protecting you, he insisted. Protecting us. I didn't want my condition to define our relationship. Lily emerged from her room, immediately assessing the situation. Without a word, she called hotel security while I kept David talking through the closed door. Your attorney is making this unnecessarily adversarial, he continued, unaware of Lily's actions. We can work this out privately, preserve what matters. The house, our savings, we built those together. This legal approach will just deplete everything in attorney fees. His concern for assets rather than the emotional devastation he'd caused was telling. Security is coming, I informed him. This conversation is over, David. Everything goes through. The attorneys now. Emma, please! His voice took on a desperate edge. You're everything to me. These other situations, they're not what you think. I can prove it if you'll just... He was interrupted by the arrival of 2 hotel security officers. I heard him shift to his charming professional persona, apologizing for the disturbance, explaining he was just trying to reconcile with his wife during a difficult time. After they escorted him from the property, Lily insisted on staying in my room for the remainder of the night. I knew he was bad news from the beginning, she said, but this is beyond anything I imagined. Me too, I whispered, the full weight of reality settling over me. The man I'd built my life around, the man whose name I carried, whose future I'd helped construct, was a carefully crafted fiction. The grief of losing him was complicated by the fact that he had never really existed at all. The morning brought notification from Meredith that David had been formally served with divorce papers. His response came within hours, an emergency motion challenging jurisdiction based on claiming residence in Vermont, and a counterpetition alleging I had known about his condition and other relationships all along. Standard deflection tactics, Meredith assured me. We have overwhelming evidence to the contrary. But be prepared. This is just the beginning of what will likely be an extremely contentious process. I nodded, a strange calm settling over me despite the legal storm gathering. The shock was gradually giving way to something more solid, determination to reclaim my reality from the elaborate fiction David had constructed around me. That afternoon, I did something I hadn't anticipated. I called Vanessa back. I've confirmed what you told me, I said when she answered, and learned even more about David's deceptions. I suspected there was more, she replied. Have you heard from him since? He showed up at my hotel last night, claimed to have a dissociative disorder that makes him create separate lives. She scoffed. That's a new one. With me, he blamed a traumatic childhood for his trust issues and need for secrecy. We should compare notes, I suggested, surprising myself. Your information helped me understand what I'm dealing with. Perhaps we can help each other navigate this. The suggestion of alliance with my husband's mistress would have seemed unthinkable days earlier. But the David she knew and the David I knew were essentially different people, characters he had created to serve his purposes. We had both been deceived, albeit in different ways. I'd like that, she agreed, especially since the legal proceedings will likely overlap in complicated ways. As I hung up, I caught sight of my reflection in the hotel mirror. Composed, determined, clear-eyed. The woman looking back bore little resemblance to the shell-shocked victim who had fled Morton's steakhouse 4 nights earlier. The path ahead would be difficult, filled with legal battles, financial complications, and likely more devastating revelations. But for the first time since Vanessa had interrupted our anniversary dinner, I felt something approaching strength. David had constructed an elaborate fiction around me for 15 years. Now I would discover the truth. Not just about him, but about who I was without him defining my reality. 2 months after the anniversary dinner that had shattered my reality, I stood in the entryway of what was once our home, surveying the half-empty rooms. The court had granted me exclusive use of the house while divorce proceedings continued. But living among memories of a fraudulent marriage had proven too difficult. Today, with Lily and Kate's help, I was retrieving the last of my personal belongings before the property went on the market. "This is the final box from your office," Kate said, carrying a container labeled teaching materials down the stairs. "Anything else before the movers tackle the furniture?" I shook my head, running my hand along the banister one last time. When David and I had purchased this house 7 years ago, I'd imagined growing old here, perhaps eventually filling it with grandchildren. Now I understood those dreams had been built on an elaborate fiction. The discoveries of the past 2 months had been staggering. Working with Meredith and a private investigator, we'd uncovered the full extent of David's deceptions. Beyond Caroline, in Vermont, there had been Natalie in New Hampshire, and evidence of a relationship with a woman named Jennifer in Rhode Island. Each had known a different version of David, different backgrounds, different career details, different life plans tailored to appeal to each woman's specific desires. Most shocking was the discovery that David Mitchell wasn't even his real name. His birth certificate listed him as Edward James Harmon, with multiple legal name changes throughout his adult life. The architecture credentials were real, but his firm's financial structure revealed systematic fraud. Client overcharges funneled to private accounts, project costs inflated to generate hidden profits. "The moving truck is here," Lily announced, returning from outside. "Are you really sure about letting him keep the Wassily chairs? They're worth thousands." The black leather and chrome chairs had been a point of contention in recent negotiations. David's attorney had argued they were connected to his professional image and should remain with him. "Let him have them," I replied, surprising myself with how little I cared about possessions that once seemed important. "I don't want anything," he touched. The divorce had become highly publicized in our community, especially after the criminal charges were filed. Bigamy, fraud, financial crimes. The local newspaper had run a feature describing David as a charismatic con man who created multiple lives across New England. Former clients were suing his firm, and 3 banks had frozen accounts associated with his various identities. David himself was currently free on bail, staying with a cousin in another state while awaiting trial. The terms of his release prohibited contact with me, Vanessa, or Caroline, a restriction he'd violated twice with late-night emails professing his true love and offering increasingly desperate explanations for his behavior. "My teacher sense is tingling," Kate said, studying my expression. "You're getting lost in your head again. Want to talk about it?" I smiled faintly at her perception. "Just processing. Some days it still feels like I'm talking about someone else's life." "Understandable," Lily chimed in. "You were married to a literal con artist for 15 years. That's not something you just bounce back from with a few months of therapy." Though blunt, her assessment was accurate. The weekly sessions with Dr. Winters had helped me understand I wasn't responsible for David's deceptions, but the impact on my ability to trust others and my own judgment would require longer healing. "Speaking of processing," Kate said carefully, "have you thought more about Vanessa's offer?" The unexpected alliance with David's former mistress had evolved over recent weeks. After confirming the baby's paternity through DNA testing with her ex-Michael, Vanessa had filed her own fraud charges against David for financial misrepresentation. Her legal team had coordinated with mine, sharing information that strengthened both our cases. Last week, she'd approached me with a proposition: co-writing a book about our experiences. A publisher had expressed interest in the story. Two women, manipulated by the same man, joining forces to expose his deceptions. The advance would help offset legal costs for both of us, and the therapeutic value of reclaiming our narratives was appealing. I'm leaning toward yes, I admitted. Dr. Winters thinks it could be healing, as long as I maintain boundaries and understand it might trigger additional processing. Plus, the money doesn't hurt, Lily added pragmatically, especially with the financial mess he left. The financial aftermath had indeed been devastating. While Meredith had successfully frozen most assets during initial filings, we'd discovered David had already liquidated and hidden significant funds. The forensic accountants were still tracing money through a labyrinth of accounts and investments. My temporary apartment, a bright modern space near the elementary school, was a far cry from our spacious craftsman home. But it represented something more valuable than square footage, a fresh start uncontaminated by lies. Ms. Mitchell? One of the movers appeared in the doorway. We found something unusual behind the built-in shelving in the upstairs study. You might want to take a look. Following him upstairs to what had been David's home office, I discovered the movers had completely removed the custom shelving unit that had housed his architecture books and awards. Behind where it had stood was a small wall safe I'd never known existed. It was concealed by the bottom shelf, the mover explained, only visible once we removed the entire unit. I stared at the safe, heart pounding. More secrets. Would they ever end? Can you open it? Lily asked. I have no idea what the combination would be, I replied, then reconsidered. Actually, wait. A memory surfaced. David always using the same 4-digit code for various locks and accounts. 0817. August 17th, a date he'd claimed was his late father's birthday. Like everything else, that was probably a lie, but the number might still work. I tried the combination, and the safe clicked open. Inside were several manila envelopes, a small leather notebook, and a stack of passports. At least 5, each bearing David's photo but different names. I removed everything carefully, feeling like an archaeologist excavating evidence of an extinct civilization. The first envelope contained birth certificates, one for David Mitchell, another for Daniel Matthews, a third for Devin Morrison. Different. Birthplaces, different parents, different dates. Manufactured identities complete with documentation. The second envelope held financial records, account numbers, passwords, investment details for holdings we hadn't yet discovered in the divorce. Investigation. The amounts listed were substantial, totaling over $2 million in offshore accounts. Holy shit, Lily whispered, looking over my shoulder. That's actual buried treasure. The third envelope was the most disturbing. Detailed notes on me, beginning from before we'd met. My habits, preferences, family background, career aspirations, all meticulously documented like research for a character study. With growing horror, I realized our chance meeting through mutual friends 18 years ago had been carefully orchestrated. He targeted you, Kate said, her voice tight with anger. This was all planned from the beginning. The leather notebook contained similar research on other women, including Caroline, Natalie, and Vanessa. Each entry included strategic approaches tailored to appeal to the specific woman, noting vulnerabilities and preferences to exploit. I sat heavily on the floor. The evidence of my husband's calculated manipulation spread around me like debris from an explosion. We need to call Meredith, Kate said, already reaching for her phone. And probably the prosecutor. The discovery renewed media interest in the case, adding predatory targeting to the growing list of David's offenses. The hidden accounts provided the financial recovery I'd needed, though the process of claiming them would take months of legal navigation. 3 weeks later, I sat across from Vanessa at the small cafe where we'd first had our revelatory conversation. Her pregnancy was more visible now at 6 months, but the anxiety that had shadowed her features during our early meetings had diminished. The publisher loves our outline, she said, sliding the contract across the table. They're especially interested in the psychological aspects, how someone like David identifies and exploits specific vulnerabilities. I nodded, having spent considerable time analyzing this with Dr. Winters. The safe contents made it clear he studied his targets extensively. My love of architecture, your artistic talent, he shaped himself to complement what we each valued. Perfect mirror technique, Vanessa agreed, reflecting back exactly what we wanted to see. The waitress delivered our drinks, herbal tea for her, coffee for me, with a curious glance between us. Our unusual partnership had become something of local legend, inspiring both support and judgment depending on the observer. Michael came to the last ultrasound, Vanessa mentioned, changing subjects. He's nervous but committed to co-parenting. That's good, I said sincerely. Her relationship with her ex had been slowly rebuilding after the paternity confirmation, providing stability she desperately needed. How was your first week back at school? She asked. Surprisingly normal, I replied, grateful for the routine of teaching. The kids are too young to understand the situation, and Ellen has been incredible about managing parent interactions. My return to Brookside Elementary had been carefully orchestrated, with the principal personally handling any uncomfortable questions from parents. A few families had requested their children be moved to different classrooms, but most had demonstrated remarkable support. And the new place? Feeling settled? Getting there, I said. It helps that it's completely different from the house. Modern instead of traditional, bright instead of those dark wood tones David always preferred. The realization that even our home's aesthetic had been selected to reinforce his invented persona still occasionally blindsided me. How much of my life had been authentic, and how much had been unknowingly scripted to accommodate his deceptions? I spoke with Caroline yesterday, Vanessa mentioned cautiously, watching my reaction. David's second wife had eventually joined our informal support network, providing valuable insights into his patterns. How is she doing with the renewed publicity? Managing. Her new husband has been supportive. Vanessa hesitated. She mentioned something interesting. Apparently David's father is still alive, living in a nursing home in Maine. Nothing like the tragic backstory he created. Each new revelation should have stopped surprising me, yet they never did. The man had lied about everything, even his own father's death. Are you going to contact him? The father? Vanessa asked. I considered the question. Maybe eventually. Right now, I'm focused on rebuilding my own foundation without adding more David-related complications. She nodded understanding. Makes sense. One revelation at a time. As we finalized details for our book project, my phone displayed an incoming call from Meredith. Excusing myself, I stepped outside to answer. Good news, my attorney said without preamble. David's taken a plea deal. 10 years with possibility of parole after 7, full financial restitution, and comprehensive psychological evaluation. The news settled over me with unexpected weight. Not relief, exactly, but a sense of boundaries being established. For the next decade at minimum, David would be unable to manipulate, deceive, or harm additional women. There's more, Meredith continued. As part of the deal, he's provided information about a storage unit containing personal items taken from you and his other partners, photographs, journals, keepsakes. Apparently, he kept trophies. The invasion of privacy, the idea that he'd secretly taken meaningful possessions, added another layer to his violation. Yet I found myself less affected than I would have been months earlier. When can I retrieve my things? I asked, more from practical necessity than emotional urgency. After ending the call, I returned to find Vanessa reviewing our chapter outlines. She glanced up questioningly. David took a plea deal, I explained. He'll be in prison for at least 7 years. She exhaled slowly. That's significant. How are you feeling about it? I considered the question carefully. wanting to be honest, with her and myself. Like it's someone else's story. The man going to prison isn't the David I thought I knew. That person never existed. Yet we both spent years loving versions of him, she observed. That's the hardest part to reconcile, I admitted. The emotional connection felt real, even if the person wasn't. We sat in contemplative silence, two women united by an extraordinary circumstance, each processing our experiences differently yet understanding each other in ways few others could. I have class tonight, I said eventually, gathering my things. Introduction to Roman Architecture at the community college. Vanessa smiled. The course you mentioned last week? That's wonderful. The architecture class represented something important, reclaiming an interest I'd developed through my marriage, but making it authentically mine. After years of attending David's lectures and events, I was exploring the field from my own perspective, without his influence coloring my experience. We're covering the Pantheon today, I said, feeling a small thrill of anticipation. I've always been fascinated by the oculus. The perfect circle of light in the dome, Vanessa nodded, creating different patterns throughout the day as the sun moves. Exactly. It's like, I searched for the right words. Like even in a carefully constructed space, nature finds a way to create constant change. Nothing stays fixed or permanent. She understood the metaphor immediately. Light revealing different aspects of the same structure as time passes. As I walked to my car, I reflected on how aptly that described my current situation. The foundation of my life, the marriage I'd believed in, had been revealed as something entirely different when illuminated from new angles. The structure remained in my history, unmovable, but my understanding of it transformed daily with each revelation. 6 months ago, I had been Emma Mitchell, celebrating 15 years with a husband I thought I knew intimately. Now I was Emma Taylor, my maiden name, reclaimed through court petition, rebuilding a life based on authentic choices rather than reactions to someone else's carefully constructed fiction. The path forward wasn't clear or easy. Trust didn't come naturally anymore. Relationships required careful navigation, and certain triggers could still transport me back to the moment of devastating revelation at Morton's Steakhouse. Yet alongside the trauma existed unexpected gifts, deeper self-knowledge, stronger boundaries, genuine friendships fortified through crisis, and a hard-earned wisdom about the complexity of truth and deception. As I joined other students filing into the brightly lit classroom, I felt a quiet certainty that had been absent during the chaotic months of discovery and legal proceedings. David had constructed my life according to his needs and narratives for 15 years. Now, finally, I was writing my own story.